Welcome to the True North podcast. This is episode 1. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing the Houston church shooting that occurred back in February of this year. So a little rundown of myself and my background. I've been law enforcement for about 18 years now. Primarily work patrol, but I've had the ability to take on some other roles within the department as well, to include training and being a member of the special response team, better known as SWAT. Each agency calls it something differently. But a little bit about what occurred that day. We're just going to go over what occurred that day, talk about some of the learning points, and it's been a couple weeks, so maybe some more information has came out since then. So just bear with me, and I will cover all that and try to give you a little bit of an insight of my experience with the training aspect of this, when you're dealing with an active shooter, and just my experience overall as a law enforcement officer. Just some information to take away from this, from the law enforcement perspective. So on that day, the female suspect responds to this church in her vehicle. She exits the vehicle with her young son. The two of them enter the church while there's a function going on. It's a rather large church. I believe it is Joel Osteen's mega church, so it's a really large church, which has security on hand and also has off-duty law enforcement that is working as security as well. And I believe after viewing the video, they did have some uniformed law enforcement on duty at that time as well. So a female enters the church. She walks past a crowd of individuals. One of the individuals recognizes that she has a firearm on her. At that point, they notify security, and security attempts to make contact with this female. At this point, gunfire is exchanged. Female is neutralized, and they also found out that the son, the suspect's son, was critically injured at that point in time too. So they do not go into any further detail right now as far as how that happened, but it happened from that exchange of gunfire at some point. I believe when it initially occurred, there was, my understanding, about 50 some rounds fired between the suspect and security and law enforcement. So yeah. One other individual that was injured was a church parishioner. I believe it was a pretty minor injury. My understanding, he was released later that evening. So currently, the motive for the shooting is still under investigation. We do believe that there is some, I don't really want to say political, maybe on the religious side of motives. They did announce initially that she did have an AR-15 that said "Free Palestine" on it. So that could be possibly some motivation of that, but that still remains unclear. They're looking into that further. So, all right, just bear with me. I'm just kind of going over some of this stuff here and whatnot. So, one thing to note. So during this exchange of gunfire, the female does make numerous comments for them to stop shooting because she has a bomb on her. That she had explosives in her book bag. She was trying to get them to stop firing at her, even though she was continuing to fire because she had explosives on her. We now know that was probably just a ploy to get them to cease fire, so she could continue to fire on law enforcement and innocent people. So they were able to find that day that she did not have any explosives in that bag. However, they did locate at her home later on, after a search warrant is conducted, other firearms in the residence, and some explosive making material. They don't go into detail with that. They may never do that, or they may. It just depends. With these, investigations, they are sometimes rather lengthy when they're looking for motives. They're looking for history of an individual, why they may have done it, and just the investigating itself, the scene and whatnot. So they did find out that she does suffer from mental illness, according to her being detained quite some time ago, but there's no other details with that. So that's an interesting bit of information with that. Some like to use that as an excuse. However, while that is important, if it was that important, she should have gotten the help that she needed back then. I do think that mental illness is an issue in this country. It's not looked at far enough. Unfortunately, you got people on both sides that they blame mental illness or they blame the gun, and those two never get together and say, "Hey, we got a real problem with with both." And that's not to say. Unfortunately, you've got people on that side saying it's a mental illness problem. These people on this side saying it's just a firearms problem. I don't think it's just a firearms problem. Personally, there's millions of gun owners that, the law-abiding, they don't commit any crimes. I myself am a proud gun owner. I don't commit crimes with them. I've known plenty of friends and family that's owned firearms, and they've never been engaged in any crimes. So, it's the individual that does these actions. So, with that, we do need to look more into the mental illness, and we also need to look into the criminality aspect. Some people just commit crimes. That's just who they are. They do evil things to people because that's who they are. And, that's why we have a judicial system. That's why we have prisons. Some of these people should not be out among, the free, and that's to safeguard the public. So back into it. So she did have an AR-15 from what I was saying earlier, with that slogan on there. She also was carrying a .22 caliber rifle as well. It doesn't specify what that was, but she did have that on her as well. So they do believe she was acting as a lone wolf. They don't believe she's tied to any terrorist organization. But like I said, it's early. There's still, it's early in the investigation. It's only happened a few weeks ago. So that's ongoing. So, all right. So we're going to get a little bit into, the response from law enforcement, kind of my take from the response, what we've learned from it after seeing video, and, what we're hearing from the news and also law enforcement spokespeople. So, on that day, law enforcement security did engage her. At some point, she is neutralized. They are, they're responding initially to that gunfire. They hear that gunfire. They're responding to that gunfire. And what we call that in active shooter training is we call that direct a threat. So what you're doing is you are responding to an active stimulus. That could be, audio, that could be people screaming, that could be gunfire, or something visual. That could be shell casings. That could be individuals laying on the ground injured or, killed. That could be blood. That could be, all sorts of different things. So they are responding to that audio stimulus, what we call direct threat. So they do a well job with that. However, there is some issues that I saw on, some of the body-worn cameras that, were a learning situation, if you will, hopefully, for these officers and maybe for these agencies too. So one thing that kind of gets brought up from time to time. So body cameras are wonderful. They're very effective. They're very good. They capture, evidence. They provide truth and transparency between law enforcement and the public. But at the end of the day, our main job is to protect. It's protect and serve. As cliche as that may sound, that is our objective. And sometimes we have equipment that goes down, and when that happens, we still have a job to do, and we need, I always look at it this way: is if my firearm's working and my radio's working, I'm doing pretty good. If my body camera goes down, or my taser goes down, other equipment I may carry on on my person or with me goes down, that happens. The old saying of, one is none and two is one is a pretty good motto to live by, and we use that with, various things, flashlights, magazines, firearms, things like that. So it's a good thing to live by, because things go down. They do. They stop working, they break or whatnot. So back to what I was originally saying. So there's two females. I can't really tell if one is security and one is law enforcement, or if they're both law enforcement or what. But one of the females' body camera is not working. She's very concerned by this, and there's gunfire going off. The gun, it's continuing. Gunfire. They're not searching for that individual. They're not moving up. The one female is heard saying, "We need to get closer. We need to get closer." The other female is more concerned about her body camera. She keeps saying, "My body camera's not working. My body camera's not working." That should not be the main concern. The main concern should be to locate that individual, neutralize that individual. That way you can preserve life. Because as we're taught, in active shooter training, whichever active shooter class you go through, they're all very similar, across the board. But we are taught that each round could be potentially a life lost, especially if you're not witnessing it, if you're still searching for that threat. You don't know if that's them just shooting indiscreetly, or if that's them shooting and harming or killing, multiple more people. So you need to get up there. So, that type of equipment is not priority one. Like I said, your firearm, your radio, number two. But like I said, your firearm is that primary weapon, because that is what is going to neutralize that threat, and then you can do all the radio communication afterward, or during, if there's a lull in shooting and whatnot. So, like I said, we just wanted to touch on that briefly. Hopefully, the agencies see this, they address that, and they fix it and they move on. Like I said, it could potentially be a learning curve. We all have times that we can look back now, especially now with body cameras. We can look back and say, "Yeah, I would have done that differently. I would have done that. Would have done that better next time." So, or I will do that better next time, and that's okay. There's no ego. There shouldn't be an ego with that. We're always learning. With the job, and if we're not, it's probably time to get out. So, another thing that was observed on body camera footage, and a little bit with the security footage as well. So one officer is there. I believe he is a uniformed officer. I don't believe he's security. He hears gunfire, and it appears, based off body camera footage, he sees her. And I can't tell whether she is engaging him or she's engaging someone else, but he reacts by tucking back into a hallway, behind definitely concealment, potentially cover. It's a little hard to tell what kind of, if that's drywall or if that's a brick wall. It looks like to be drywall. So we definitely have concealment where she cannot see him. one difference was, just briefly, concealment is something that hides you, but it doesn't offer any type of protection from rounds. And cover is something that can conceal you and can provide some protection from rounds. And that's a whole nother thing. Could potentially get into that on a video down the road. But anyway, so he does tuck back in there. She continues to fire. He stays back there for 3-4 minutes with never engaging back out into the hallway there to try to locate and neutralize her. That's a major issue. That we're, like I said, we're taught, just as I was speaking about earlier, when we're hearing those rounds go off, we need to get in there. And that's not to say we just give up tactics altogether and get ourselves killed, because we're no good to anybody if we're injured or dead. But that is to say that you are giving up a little bit of those tactics to neutralize that threat and to stop this, stop the dying. So you kind of got to find that medium with that, and not do, you got to do a little bit of both. You're going to have to give up a little bit of that safety and security and tactics in order to complete your mission. But at the same time, you're not just going to be running out there without any plan. And this right here is a prime example of why we should train. Why there should be yearly training on active shooter. We all get rusty when it comes to this type of training. Some will say that it's as easy as just going in there and neutralizing the threat. Yes and no. So some of that is true. Yeah, we do got to get in there, and the primary objective is to stop that threat. But there is the tactics that come into it. There is the the reps that we need to get into and make sure that we're doing it correctly and safely. And so if this ever does happen, we have a plan. We already have a game plan, and we're not just making this up as we go. And that's not to say that everything is going to go perfect according to plan, because it never does. None of this stuff ever does. But it's good to have at least a base plan, so you're not panicking, and you've got some sort of idea of what you need to do. So with that, that's probably about all I have right now on the subject. I hope to cover some more stuff in the future here, some of which is going to be law enforcement related, dealing with training and tactics, and may even get into some of the mental health stuff with law enforcement. That's a huge importance to me, and it's something that's starting to be looked at more. So I'm really excited about potentially doing that too, and that's something I'm starting to learn more and more about myself. So, but like I said, I like to want to start to cover that stuff, but I'm also going to be covering firearms reviews, firearms equipment, gear, all that stuff, because that's kind of my go-to. That's what I really enjoy. But I hope to try to expand out and cover a wide variety of things that people might like. Till next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow me on my YouTube channel and Instagram. Both are True North 42.